I think anyone who knows Home Tree knows that we've always, for different reasons, I suppose some of us have farming backgrounds, all of us have in various ways worked on farms, and I suppose for some reason we have a shared philosophy around ensuring that we work as closely as possible with farmers, and some of that is philosophical, and some of it is just probably like acknowledging that there's actually no other way of doing it in an Irish context. Farmers own 80% of the land in Ireland, and so if they're not part of your conversations, and if they don't trust you, it's unlikely that you'll succeed in your objectives, whatever they are. For us, it's about nature restoration. So yeah, they've always been part of the summer school and the conference, and yeah, I'm delighted to have three really interesting farmers in front of us today. Before I let them introduce themselves, I suppose the slant or the angle always with Home Tree is about nature and nature restoration, and this, I'm pretty opportunistic. I was just sent this by Fiach. Is Fiach in the room? He's not. He's not. Yeah, Fiach is one of our ecologists here, and that's Ireland's only legally protected legally protected insect. It's called a marsh fritillary. They're really rare. They have this interesting life cycle where they need a very specific type of plant and hoof mark, or the kind of microtopography caused by certain animals grazing, and they're just dead rare. And that was seen just over at the back of this building in the last hour. So that's pretty cool.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Hot off the press.
Yeah. So I suppose the theme, what we wrote down today was the future of farming, and we will get around to that. But maybe just a quick show of hands. Who in the room is farming? Quick show of hands. Who's farming? Okay. Who's from a farm but not farming? Yeah, a couple more. Okay, and who's just they're not from a farm, no farm connections, not farming? Hands up. So it's actually the majority. Interesting. I'm always surprised in an Irish context. There's usually a significant enough showing. So what I had said to the lads is, preempting that, is that we're really going to talk a bit about your farms, just not the philosophy or the vision or the future, but just like day to day, what happens on them, because I think people will be interested in that. So yeah, we're joined by Rachel Creighton, dairy farmer, Rob Ó Foghlú, horticulturalist, and Colin Gavin, upland sheep farmer. So maybe before getting into your farms, just introduce yourself, maybe your journey to farming. Yeah, where you're from.
Me first?
Go first.
Hi, I'm Rachel. So my farm is over in Kildare. I was born on the farm. It's my family farm. So I'm the third generation now. We are a dairy farm. My father would have started dairying in the 70s, but I didn't initially go into farming. I actually went into zoology, and I then went into Dublin Zoo. I was working as a zookeeper for nearly 15 years, and then 4.5 years ago, took over the farm. So there was a big journey there, and I suppose because of the conservation background that I would have, I've been looking at our farm from maybe a different perspective, and really bringing the best out of the farm from that point of view.
Great, that's perfect for now.
Yeah, Rob Ó Foghlú, originally from Wexford, and living and working now from Ballinspittle. And I suppose my journey, I'm one generation off the farm. And I was talking to Mancon here a couple of days ago. In one of his books, he'd a reference to he'd a word called stave. And my uncle, so my father was the youngest of a big farming family, and the youngest, and he ploughed fields with a horse. So it's just one generation for me, which is just incredible. And when I was growing up, like, my dad was the youngest of a big family, but he was old, old man. And that word stave, I couldn't, we could never find out what it meant, And what it came to in one of Mangon's book was reference a big burly man. And I was like, that's him. So yeah, I wasn't born on the farm, but one generation off it. And I suppose I had it in me, and I would have worked very, very hard to get the money together. And then my wife just walked in there. 2018, then we put money together and we bought 13 acres in Ballinspittle. So we'll talk about more of that in a bit.
Yeah, great. When did you know that you wanted that was when did it become a kind of a goal for you to be like? Because you were born into it, we'll come to that, but you actually paid into the club. Like, at what point in your life were you like, geez, I want to be involved in food production?
Yeah, I suppose it was just always
right. It was always
in me, and over the years, just visiting the farm and being the farm, it was that whole side of it. I mean, but where I was born and raised, tree planting, I suppose, was the first love.
Yeah.
I've been planting trees for 40 years.
Would you say you've reached the position of stave yet?
I don't know, maybe another few years.
Steve Ó Foghlú.
I'll have to get the horse out, yeah.
I should let you know, Rob also works here with us, a very important part of our team in Home Tree. It's just opportunistic to have him up on the stage talking about other aspects of his life. Colm, tell us.
Yeah, so my name is Colm Gavin. I am a farmer in the west, up in Leenane. It's on the Mayo-Galway border. I'd be on the Mayo side for anyone that's interested in a bit of GAA side of things. We'd farm about 110 hectares of uplands mostly, and I would farm quite a large section of that is commonage, and the rest of it's private land. But I would have came in, and going back to what you said, I would have came in to farming about 10 years ago, and I would have leased the farm off my uncle. But our family are on this farm for 8 generations, so we have a massive hold in this land, or it has a hold on us, whichever. And before that time, I didn't know. I had an awful longing to go at farming, to go farming somehow or another. And however it was going to happen, I just had this was there, and the opportunity to lease the farm came up, and I
straight in, no kissing. There you go. Am I right? Someone asked in one of the last panels. They said, "Oh, do you have to Home Tree have a connection to Farming for Nature?" And my answer was, Farming for Nature is this fantastic initiative by Burren Bio, where they all they do is they just put a camera on a farmer and say, "Tell us about your farm and nature," and it's the best. So we can probably get into it. A lot of the obstacles are really in terms of farmers embracing nature restoration. Some of them are technical and financial, but a lot of them are cultural. Farmers not seeing their place in this nature restoration future. And what Farming for Nature does is it's not preaching. It's just one farmer saying, "I did it. I love it." If that resonates, great. But you're definitely one. So they pick farmers, and you're definitely one. You're one too. Are you one? Not yet.
Not yet. They're coming out to the farm next month.
There you go. So I had no idea that you were all farmers for nature. So there you go. No. Brilliant. I had no idea when I pulled it together. Colm, I think what might be an interesting way of you talking about your farm system is maybe do like a fly through of a year on the farm. Like for what does the cycle of the year look like? Before you go on, your farm was interesting in that there was Michael Healy-Rae was in the news last week talking about the green land and the brown land. The green land being the enclosed, the good fields. You've no green land, or your farm is all the.
It's all the brown land.
The upland.
Yeah. The
unenclosed, the wild kind of land.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating.
And the uplands start at sea level, just so you get that into your so we go to 700 metres is the top of our holding, and the bottom is the sea.
Wow.
So
if you know the place, you head west of Leenane on the north side of the fjord, and then you kind of come to a right turn up Bundura Pier, and you're up there and into the right. So it's a great description. It's right on sea level, but it's absolutely the uplands. However you make sense of that.
What did you ask me?
So what did I ask you? Tell us about the year cycle.
Yeah. Okay. So I suppose we'd start off with birth. So we just finished our lambing now. Maybe 2 weeks ago, I had a lamb. That was the last one.
Are they lambing out or lambing in?
Lambing out, yeah. I've no real facilities. I have a shed for something that might be sick or whatever, but in general, they're out. They're on the hill. It'll be an extensive system. They're they're on the hill year long. We bring them in this time of the year. We'd start to bring them in to mark them and put castrate and dot tails and all that kind of fun stuff. And we would draft them then for sale in August time.
You're in the business of producing lamb.
We're in the business of producing
That's
lamb.
the thing that goes off
Yeah.
your farm is lamb. What age?
So we sell forward stores is what it would be called. So I can't fatten a lamb to a finished lamb with the grass I have. So there's a guy that comes down from Granard and he buys my stock, and he'll fatten them then because he's got obviously a longer growing period than I would have. So I obviously don't make as much money on them in that way. So, but it's the system that does work for us. We'd also bring them to the mart as well, and but it's primarily lamb. Wool is not really an event.
So so you have them down. You're doing all the kind of housekeeping, the docking, the marking, or whatever.
Yeah.
You send them the ewes back out. Are they in lamb at this stage?
No, okay.
No.
So we'd put them back in lamb around the 20th of November, and you'd have them then 147 days later. So take back 6 and move on a couple of months.
Yeah.
That's how we work it out. So about the 14th of April would be when we'd start the lamb.
And is the idea that they're coming into grass, then they lamb when the grass is starting to grow, or what? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they kind of think the world is ending back in October, November, so they're getting a bit excited, and next thing they want to have more lambs. So that's their idea.
Right.
But yeah, I'd like to push it out a bit later. This year, everything was as good as could be in having sheep was concerned. There was very little issues. Really nice lambs came out, and ewes in good health. Perfect grass. Everything's good.
What do you do? The conventional Mayo blackface, or do you do? Farmers are getting into the different types of sheep now. Are you traditional?
Where we are is the home of the blackface sheep in Ireland. So they would came to answer your question. Yes, Mayo blackface, but there would be a massive tie-in in with the Mayo blackface in our area. They came into the place around the 1840s. Now, it has other stories with mass evictions around the place, but that is the history of where we are with that animal. I have tried other sheep, but for my system, they don't work.
We could probably talk the rest of this session just about that history of the blackface sheep coming in and being so hardy, and all of a sudden there was a whole new utility to the uplands.
Yeah.
And all the social repercussions of that, and the agroecological differences of the Boolean system, and it's all very interesting. So you keep the lambs for 6 months, and then you don't have that kind of high quality grass.
No.
So you send them away at that stage, and that's the farm system. Are you organic or not?
I am. Yeah.
You are organic.
Yeah, I'm fully organic now.
Yeah. So you're only just finished this year. You finished the conversion. Was that a kind of I think you would have said to me before, there was no downside to going in. Like, it didn't restrict you really. No. There was your system was pretty much organic anyway.
But organic is just a standard.
Yeah.
Do you know? It's not. That's all it is. Like, it's not something up in a plant. Like, my meat tastes the exact same. I'm not medicating anymore.
But I suppose, like, say some people might be like, I couldn't grow the amount of grass without maybe the synthetic fertilizer. You wouldn't have been in that game anyway.
No,
so
I wasn't in that game.
there was no downside to it.
An easy transition.
Great. I know you do lots for nature on your farm, and you've been real front runners. But maybe we'll stall the digger for a minute, and we'll chat about your own systems, Rob.
And maybe I'll go back one step and just talk maybe, because we're in terms of what we've done is a little bit different than most. But say we bought the land 2018, and myself and Ciara there, we are Farming for Nature ambassadors, and we set out very much explicitly to farm for nature. So we developed a concept around biodiversity farming. We call ourselves the Ardnaculla Biodiversity Farm. So we're farming biodiversity. And in our innocence, we've done it all sort of. We haven't gone down the grants road or anything like that.
Farm the postman.
Yeah, none of that at all.
When I bought my place, and it's only 10 acres or whatever. One of the neighbours called me and says, I tell you what you do now, you get your herd number, send it off, and you'll farm the postman, and you'll farm
We weren't so cute, but so 2018. So we set out. We planted something like I'll give you a really quick version of it. 8 to 10,000 trees. We planted hedgerows, massive woodland shelter belts. We put in trial orchards. And I love the term trial, so it means if and when it fails, it's sure it's only a trial. But apple orchard, coconut orchard, and damson orchard, those areas then that were like we got advice from an ecologist that would have told us Ireland's most endangered habitat, as bad as it is, isn't actually trees, it's grassland. So we left an area, we restored a meadow area, and I'll come to that in a second. We put in polytunnels. So we have a number of commercial polytunnels. We have a large outdoor growing space as well.
One sec, Rob. There's Rob's farm now. No, it's like a model farm, isn't it?
It looks.
Should have farmed the postman.
It's much easier anyway.
Yeah.
And you know what? So we have an apple orchard here, coconut orchard, damsons, growing area, and up here, interestingly, I said, "What the hell? We'll try it." Is a truffle area, truffle.
Wow. Amazing.
So you're loaded now.
My husband didn't.
Trial truffles or regular truffles?
Forget your post. And that was an interesting journey just in itself because, God, here I go now. I could talk all day about this, but we sent a soil sample away to France, the sort of home of truffle growing, and we got back that kind of classic French response, like, "Can we grow truffles here?" No. Don't go there, And I found a guy in New Zealand where they're growing truffles now where they wouldn't have the suitable soil, so they're much more used to manipulating soil for truffle growing. So we put in something like 20 tons of lime into an area. It was a bit of a mad one, and we went for it. And a local collaboration with a local farmer, actually, a ploughman, Jimmy Nine, who ploughed the land and all that for me. So we put those in. It's a real trial, and it's sort of a test in manipulating pH. But everything else is very much in sync with what's there. There's a group of us here, actually. Trees and all that are all.
When was that photo up?
Yeah, it was taken about, was it 2 years ago? Yeah.
Tell us, Rob, no, because you're jumping ahead to the nature. Tell us what you're actually producing here. Like what's, and you both worked off the farm always, or was it at a certain point?
Yeah, it was very part-time. So I'm actually allergic to bees, funnily enough, but there's Kira's little corner there. That's a beehive which is growing scents. But coming off the farm then, veg, which we're supplying, we're about 10 kilometres from Kinsale. So that's obviously a big kind of culinary area. So we're producing veg for the local market. Producing apples and damsons, and the coconuts is one of those failed trials, so we're not producing.
Right.
Yeah.
How is that about?
Don't know. They flower very.
Coconut is a commercial hazelnut, in case some might know that, some mightn't. It's just a well-bred hazelnut.
Yeah. But they flower very early, and they're a really delicate, small red flower. And we're actually, you can see the sea in the background. That's the old head of Kinsale. So it's a windy spot, and actually you can't really see it there, but that's all a series of hills and glens. So the wind really funnels in here.
Yes, the wind might have been. You see now here in Clare at the moment, you see they're just coming out of flower, but the whitethorn are in flower. But the flowers are all on the east side of the bush.
Yeah.
Because it's the only bit that's getting protection. And sure, if the flower doesn't form, the fruit doesn't form, and that's it. So, yeah. Very good, very good. Thanks. That's great. I should show you this. We were very organised. That's Cullum's farm now.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah.
Wow.
So wow, that's Dulac, Cullum, is it?
Yeah, and that's on into Hillsburg, and where Ray is here, and
Incredible. Yeah, incredible.
that's only halfway up now as well.
Yeah, Jesus, halfway up.
Yeah,
700 meters is some height to go to.
it's not too bad.
Did the sheep use the whole 700?
Yeah,
They do, crazy.
Yeah.
Dog's name.
I haven't a clue.
Extras for the day.
That's Sailor, I think, and I don't know what the other one is.
That's your uncle Teddy.
Yeah, that's
which is my
Teddy.
son's name. So
Yeah.
it's a good name for him.
We'd have a
You were saying to me recently that and you can come around to the Dexters in a minute, but you were saying there was a big storm, and Colin and his dad have a couple of cows. Some sheep farmers are getting into cows, and we can chat about that in a minute. It's a big storm, and so you kind of expect, like, geez, where are the cows gone now with the big, because they're kind of free roaming, and you'd expect them to maybe be down looking for shelter. Where did you find them?
They were up above. They were near the 700 meters. This was December. November, late November, early December. We had a massive snow event followed by a massive rain event, and the place was turned upside down. Cattle went missing for a couple of days, and we couldn't see them high up, low down. And I was across in Killery Adventure Centre doing a bit of work one day, and I just looked across and I could see these 3 black dots up on the hill. Like, that's the cattle. They were right, and they were within a hair's breadth of the top. So,
Wow.
What do you think that was?
I can just imagine the noise
Down low.
of the landslides and the water. They must have just gone. But,
so interesting.
Yeah. But they were, from when they came on the farm, they went up. They were heading up all the time.
Go on.
Yeah, and they were. I'm going to go into it.
Hold on. Let me chat to Ray, because I think that's an interesting one. We were actually due to be joined by John Duffy and his partner. That's a very low resolution picture, but they farm not dissimilar land to yourself, Colm, and up in the Derry Vey Mountains in Donegal. And he was running a couple of hundred sheep. He's 400 or 500 acre farm, and he's converted over to these. They're a kind of a hybrid. He worked with Clive Bright with the breeding. It's a kind of a hybrid between a Belted Galloway. They put a lot of thought into the breeding of the cow anyway, but he's suited for these kind of mountainous areas. And when you talk about your cows, maybe we'll come back to that. But Rachel, I'll bring up your lovely farm. One sec. This is how well prepared my slides were. Look at the intro slide. Now, hey, is that Mount Leinster?
It's that is, I'm not sure which. It's the Wicklow Mountains anyway.
So where exactly is the farm?
So we're
Rachel?
right on the border with West Wicklow.
Okay.
But we're in Kildare.
Gotcha.
So if you just to the right of the picture, there's a corner on the road, and that's Wicklow.
Okay.
So we're very, very close. The workings of the farm for the year. So,
tell us what the works is.
So starting from birth is a good one. So we would calve down around February. So calving went very long this year. So we only just finished. and then we're going to go into silage now as soon as I get home. So probably either tomorrow or Monday. And so basically as soon as we finish calving, we're starting to prepare for winter.
How many cows do you have, Rachel?
So we are milking 122 at the moment, but I could go into nitrates and derogation all the rest
You're
of
in
it.
derogation, are you?
We are in derogation.
So for people in the room, it's an allowance of a higher stocking rate than most farms.
Yeah.
About 6,000 farms in it.
So we would have started out with a cemental herd, which would have been seen as a suckler herd as such, but they're actually milking. But they were given a lower nitrates value. So, but because of a genetic issue that happened with the cementals about 15 years ago, maybe less, he started going into Frisians. So basically, our herd started whatever the straws were that he got. He had dwarfism and anemia in the herd.
Wow.
So he lost a good lot of his herd. So he went into Frisians then. So Frisians would be considered, your hardcore dairy, and so would be given a much higher nitrates value. Because of this, so you've gone, say, from 80 units to 92 units. So when you add all of those up for every cow, then suddenly you're marched into derogation. So we're starting to go back the other way. So we've just started breeding Montbéliards, which would be a relative of the cemental. So a good dual purpose cow. So good milker, but good for the beef industry as well. So so that's the direction we're going with our cows. So but we do breed again. We calve down again in the autumn.
Oh.
And so we're milking all year round. So we're becoming fewer and far between. But
are you a liquid milk supplier?
We're a liquid milk supplier.
So just so for people in the room, most farmers today are really farming for milk solids.
Yeah.
They're farming for the proteins and the fats and stuff. Very few. What's the number of liquid milk suppliers? Just a couple of hundred. Like.
Yeah, there's very few.
Who are
There's
the milk
very
we
few
drink for
left in the
breakfast?
country. I don't know the exact number, but yeah, it's just the milk that you get for your breakfast cereal or whatever. That's us.
A huge minority now produce that milk.
Yeah.
So that's what you're at the liquid milk, okay?
Yeah, exactly. But we don't, with the nitrates as well, you're going into banding, so there's 3 different bands. I don't want to get too much into it. It gets very complicated and you have to have a mathematical mind. But we're in the middle band, so we don't want to go into the top band, otherwise we're in serious trouble.
Okay.
So we are working on our solids a bit more, and so that's partly what the Monties are going to help us with. And so that's kind of
Tell us just about the footprint of the farm. Is it what size
so
is it? What are the
so about 180 acres. We're in 2 parts. So the 150 is the main farm, and then we have an out farm, which is they're both high in biodiversity, which is wonderful. But the out farm is especially because there's very little done with it. It's low stocked. We use the upper field for silage, and then the bottom field is just low stocked with our replacement heifers, so the heifers that are going to come in soon. So they're busy getting pregnant and eating away. So they're just there, and there's 3.5 acres fenced off for wetland, and so it's a wonderful biodiverse area. And then the main home has our forest, and has overall we've got about 8 kilometres of hedgerow. Throughout we've got about 4 ponds. So, a big thing about our farm is that we're habitat diverse, so which helps us become biodiverse.
I had a question for you now. Oh yeah, where you are in the world, is it getting drier, do you think? Is it that a challenge on your farm? I know some of the farms...
Our farm has a mix.
Okay.
So we've got very heavy soils on the bottom of it, what we call Newtown low. So that would be very heavy. So that is, we really rely on those 30 acres during the obviously we're on a rotation, so it doesn't matter, but they are where we know we're going to get good grass on that rotation. But it's, this time of year you're talking about every 21 days they return to that same field. So and we strip graze in the meantime. And so those are heavy, but then this time of year, the upper fields would be very, very dry. And so you'd see grass suddenly going backwards. It's just burning off.
Did you know, John Kelly is not so far from you. Do you know John Kelly is another... Kelly.
No.
He's from the north originally, but he's farmed that neck of the woods, West Wicklow, but he was actually in sheep, but I was in his farm doing the thing about, he's got a lot of trees in, and I was asking him about, a lot of people, certainly in the West anyway, people would talk about putting trees in the wet corners. I said, why do you have the trees in the hill there? He's like, there's a sandy kind of gravel deposit. He was like, grass would burn out every year. Yeah. There was actually dry spots.
We've planted a lot of birch up there to try and help us with that. Or beech. And so we do have a few mature beech trees up there already, and we've planted quite a number more, but obviously it's got to wait.
I was.
Yeah, you can see them there in the background. They're the beech.
You kind of assume.
This beech you were saying before we planted the whole yard.
No.
Beech trees. Can't see them.
No, you just can't see them. The resolution isn't good enough. But that was taken after.
I suppose coming from Ireland, you assume that cows, where milk is being produced, cows are eating grass. But I remember I met some dairy farmers from Kent in the UK about 2 or 3 years ago. I said, oh yeah, tell us about your system and whatever. I said, oh well, cows are in a shed, we grow maize and we feed them the maize. I was like, why would you not be out grazing grass? And they just don't have the climate for it. They're like, most summers, all the grass dries off in the southeast of England, and we're not there yet, I don't think, in the southeast of Ireland, but it's increasingly a question in farmers' heads. Is this grass system viable? Is that coming up for you? Or are you, with that low area, are you still okay? Or
we're still okay with it at the moment. It's not something we've thought about or considered at the moment. Anyway, so
you probably saw it, Robin, down around Kinsale. There's unbelievable amounts of maize going in.
Yeah.
When maize is going in, they kind of lay a strip of biodegradable plastic over it, so you see these strips in the field, and it's just a crop that's more. It'll happily grow with much less water. Grass needs to be kind of wet the year round.
Yeah.
Very good. So all of you in your own way have been on this kind of journey to a more biodiverse farm, and you've kind of hinted at it. How did you end up getting into a column? And how did you get into it, and what kind of things have you been doing?
So I suppose we would have been. I'd farm along the Bundera River, and the Bundera River is probably Europe's best example of a freshwater pearl mussel catchment. And what the freshwater pearl mussel is, for those who don't know it, it's a species that if it's there, everything else is working. Everything is doing its thing, and it's producing a population that it's producing juveniles, and it's producing a sustainable population. So to have that in place, we knew that we were kind of doing okay. There was a project started up, the Freshwater Pearl Mussel Project.
To give you an example of what Colm's saying, like everything is in place, if the pearl mussel is there, they release a free swimming little larvae into the water, the pearl mussel, when they breed. And this larvae is down near where the river enters the sea. It needs to find a salmon, whether a salmon, a trout or a salmon. And it needs to grab onto its gills and get a lift up to the top of the river.
Yeah.
Where it drops down into a gravelly bed, and the gravel needs to be clean and blah. So an amazing, what do they call, an indicator species? Sorry. So anyway, this scheme.
It was a project. It was an EIP, so it was European Innovation
Partnership.
Thank you. And
I always call it a project. Always.
But I suppose what they were looking at, they were just looking at how carbon was stored in your farm, not as in was there carbon been released anywhere, and that was the base of the project. And we looked at kind of certain things. But I suppose with these projects, they came along, and we were up until then we were kind of getting a tap on the top of the head to say you're not really doing anything right, and everything was kind of against you. Whereas these guys came on, Derek McLaughlin, quite a similar lad to yourself, was a real good communicator and a personable type of person, and he brought people along, and he started to kind of say, well, you're actually doing the right thing, but if you do maybe 2 or 3 of these other things, it'll be just that much better, and he explained it clearly as to why we were doing what we were doing. We also learned an awful lot about the species that's on our land, like our white beak sedges and our bog myrtle and the bog aspidum and all these things that were always there, but you're traipsing through and you're not kind of passing any heed of it, and your eyes open to it. And we were up the hill one day and the quad with the old fella, and it was we just seen the stage, and it was like, Jesus, that's just savage. And before that, you wouldn't have noticed. And now your eye is in, and you're just, it's all making sense. And it's just, this is a good thing to have in your hand. It's not going against your farming system, and everything is working well together.
As I always say, observation is the beginning of devotion. You start paying attention, and then one day you just say, "Geez, I love to see that." There, all of a sudden, it's a hedgerow's just a hedgerow, and someone says, "That's whitethorn, that's spindle," and then you see it forevermore. Fuck, I love to see it.
Then you see the negative stuff then as well, like your invasive species and stuff like that. Does anybody know what rhododendron is around here?
Everybody does.
So rhododendron would be one of the negative species, and we don't actually have a lot of it on our land, but there is quite a bit around. We'd have Delphi Lodge would be kind of like, we'd labour that, and that would have brought it in.
Epicenter.
Yeah. So it's kind of coming out of there, and it's...
Well, we might come back to the Rhodo, because you have a big kind of project. You're involved in a big kind of project with the Rhodo that's super positive in its own way. What kind of measures?
Okay.
So you were trying to benefit this river, this important habitat for the. What did you actually do?
So there was 3 kind of major things. There was one of the things was sheep dip. So I don't have, like you said, I don't have greenland to spread. When you get rid of sheep dip, you put it out in a mixed ratio, and you spread it on your land, and gets broken down. I wouldn't have enough green land to do that, so we were funded to bring in a mobile sheep dipper to to dip our sheep, and he'd take the dip away and he'd put it in
Some treatment or something.
yeah. The other thing then was the removal of the invasive rhododendron. And then I had one little spot on, this is my favourite little thing. We had one spot where when the river flooded, it would come in and there was people fishing on the river and there was animals walking here. So the whole place was getting kind of poached. And it was happening so slowly, it weren't really passing any heed. The next thing the project team said, well, if you put a bridge in here, you could improve your score. And we like the bridge that Derek came up with was fairly mental. Like that's not probably going to work here, or it's going to just cost too much money. And we kind of said, no, we're going to put something else in. And we did. We got a few stones and a few straws from a bog locally and a small bit of a pipe. And this is revegetated. Animals cross it, people fish it, and it's revegetated. It's grassed up, and it's still flooding and unflooding, but it's just intact now.
Yeah, and this is the kind of one of the great things about these results-based schemes. And in the past, there used to be these actions-based schemes where the department said, "Do this action and we'll pay you. Do that." Whether the action worked or not, whether it was the right fit for the farm or not, you just did the action, you got the money. Now with results-based, it's like saying whatever Colm and his dad think will work. Once the results are good, once the outcomes are good, you get the payment. So that's great to hear. When I was, we'll move on now. When I was on your farm, one of the things I saw was you had these boards kind of stuck down into the drains. One of the big threats to the pearl mussel is sedimentation of the gravel beds. Was that an anti-sediment device?
Yeah, so we were in a sandstone region, like all the hills are sandstone around, and you end up with these kind of peat pipes. So what you have is a layer of peat and mineral layer, and the sand is kind of moving on. I didn't mention that we get about 3 meters of rainfall every year, so we have that to deal with. But I had an open drain kind of going into the river, as most places had. But I just put in about 5 or 6 of these, just timber weirs, and they took what they do is they stop the sediment, not all of it, but a lot of it from going into the river. And what it also does is it takes the energy out of the drain as well, and it puts the sediment out on the side as well.
So there was sand backed up right in the drain and spread out in the little flat area. Yeah. That might be your Greenland in the future now. Nice, well-drained, really nice alluvial soils. Yeah. How did you come to the nature thing, Rachel? You obviously brought some thoughts back with you. It's maybe in your mum and dad anyway, but what was your journey to it?
So I suppose when we first came to the farm, obviously my dad hadn't been working on his own. He was already part of the EIP for protecting farmland pollinators, but he hadn't any time really to invest into it because he was on his own. He was working 7 days a week and just didn't have the mental capacity to be able to do anything about it. But he did want it to work. So I started investing my time into it and trying to figure out what this was. I didn't even know what an EIP was actually at the time. So it was fantastic to get involved with. So I got involved with 40 different farmers around Kildare that were very passionate about farming with nature and protecting the pollinators. So that's where it inspired me to really, okay, this is what we need to do, and we need to protect these hedgerows, and this is how we need to manage them from now on. We need to reduce our fertilizer usage. We need to try and really restrict ourselves in any kind of herbicides that we're using, and try to do this. Obviously, you can't go into shock mode either.
No.
So trying to do this over time. So we're really progressing something really well. And as you say, results based. That EIP again was also results based. So by the time the 4 years was up, so which is last year, we had reached like one of the highest scores.
Oh, brilliant.
Which was fantastic. So it just showed that the work that we were putting in was really making a massive difference in the biodiversity build up on our farm.
So 2 things that again mightn't be obvious that are worth clarifying. One is EIP, it's European Innovation Partnership. It's the state. It's a mechanism of EU funding that basically says if you see a policy gap, as some phenomena that there's no adequate policy for, we'll fund you to trial an approach. So it's really good like that. We've been the beneficiary of 2 of them here, and they're fantastic. The other one is results-based, this idea of like, if you're producing the results, you get paid. Sadly, the idea of that should be that, just like milk, the more you produce, the more you get paid. Unfortunately, results-based is kind of new, and it was hard to introduce it, very hard, because the farm orgs, I suppose, they're just focused on getting the money to the farmers. They don't want quibbling, or and that's understandable. And so they were thinking, sure, what about the farmers who maybe mightn't get the high results? So there was a difficulty in getting it over the line, but we got it over the line, and that's huge. A problem with it is that we capped it. We capped it at 7 or 10,000 euro maybe. So the farmer who actually could produce huge amounts of biodiversity couldn't get rewarded for it, and hopefully we can deal with that. You're a dairy farm. Dairy farms have to, by nature, look after their grass well. You need good grass. You can't necessarily let it go to flower or go to seed. Did that mean a lot of your pollinator action was focused in margins and hedgerows and waterways, or was there infield action? Or
Both.
Okay.
So if we were planting, multi-species swards, which we didn't, but we do have certain parts of our fields would be permanent pasture, so would have a lot of diversity in them. And then we also would have sowed in a lot of white clover.
Right.
So we haven't sowed in red clover because they're, you got to test one thing out first, and then we can try another. Red clover would have bloating issues for cattle, and there has been history of that happening. And so we just want to be certain
steady as you go,
and see how we get on.
What was the kind of prescription for the hedgerows? What was the change in management that you applied?
So making sure that you're not cutting every single year. Obviously, there's certain ones that you have to around roadways, safety issues, that kind of stuff, but we're not cutting the tops of them. Just then fencing around 1.5 meters away so that it has room to grow.
Yep.
And then and also just not cutting every year. You're waiting 3 to 5 years before cutting again.
Generally, trees will flower, fruit trees will flower, like hawthorn or blackthorn, on the second year of growth. So if you hit the hedge every year with a flail or whatever, you won't get much flowering. So yeah, very good. Rob, I am looking at the clock, and I promise this concert won't start without us. I'll make sure of it.
Maybe just in terms of I suppose target species or whatever like that for us. I mean, we set out very much focused on biodiversity. I know that you brought up the team of devotion. We're in Ballinspittle. I don't know how many people in the room have heard of the moving statue. It's a good way of aging an audience, actually.
Just for Rob, the Englishman, there's just a moving statue of the Holy Mary that lives down there. We're all aware of it, so it's a pretty normal thing.
But immediately across the road from it, the statue's still there, but it's still being kept, and across the road from it, there's a groundskeeper person that looks after it. And I stopped one day to congratulate him on keeping large clusters of orchids, not cutting them. And I got out and I said it to him, and he had no idea that he just liked the flower. And what it was a heat-spotted orchid. It's a beautiful flower, purple and white. And about a year or two into managing our place, we noticed if you go back to that picture in the lower glen, that 3 orchids appeared. And it's a heat-spotted orchid. And now last summer we counted something like 108.
Wow.
So we've gone from 3 to 108.
That's amazing.
And I just finished up just in terms of target species. We've jay in our glen as well. Like, we're blessed, nothing to do with us. But they're I don't know if you know this, but they're one of their main food sources are acorns. And I think they remember, someone can correct me on this, but they plant hundreds as a winter food source. And they remember where something like 98% of them are. But that 2% then is acorns for us. So what we're getting now in the middle of dairy country, quite incredibly, is oak woodland coming back and orchids.
Yeah, incredible. And it was interesting hearing you talk about was it cross-leaved heath or something you saw and you were delighted, one of the biggest problems that happened, particularly with designated land, of which yours probably all is designated land. Designated when the Irish state drew a kind of a line around huge parts of the countryside and said that's very important for nature. But they never brought the farmers in on the story. Yeah. What nature? Why? And if they'd done that at the start and said, that's the cross-leaved heath, or that's the orchid, or whatever, it would have been a far easier process. But farmers were faced all kinds of restrictions without ever knowing what they were actually tasked with looking after. So we don't have much time, so I'll do a very quick whip around, because I was kind of going to get into maybe a discussion about your thoughts on the future of farming or in your particular sectors, but maybe you could just say things that you'd like to see within your sectors, that align with your philosophy of your farm. Rachel, what would you love to see in terms of support or policy or whatever for ye as a commercial, productive dairy farm on the East Coast?
Well, I suppose just being able to show that farming with nature can still allow for high producing dairy industry, that commercial dairy farmers especially don't need to be afraid of having a lot of nature around them. So I know that's very generalized, but I suppose that's would be one of the big things.
A friend of mine, Thomas Duffy, his big fear is that we go the direction of, the West Coast becomes where we do all the nature, and then the East Coast is a sacrifice zone for high productive farming. He's like, that's a disaster for so many different reasons.
So there's many pockets within these farms that can actually be
and
used for nature.
There's many good examples. David Kerr is another farmer for nature ambassador, and he's like fantastic. He's the ideal person to be getting into farming for nature because he's got the highest milk solids in Leash, but he also has the best pond, And so I was like, well, if if the best guy can have a pond, then I can have a pond too. So, Colm, is there something you'd like to see? You've probably seen a bit of progress in recent years.
But I suppose what I kind of like, we're providing services, like we're providing protein, and we're providing clean water, and we're providing carbon store, and like we're only paid for probably one of them. So
proper payments for services provided. 100%. Couldn't agree more. I think that's really important, and those payments can't be on these 5-year cycles. You need to say this has a real value to the broader public, and we're going to commit to. It was a big theme at the conference the other day. This payments for ecosystem services. They need to be. They can't be, the private sector isn't going to step in, and it's the state. So like providing footpaths to schools. It's an important thing we need. We have to pay for it. It's as simple as that. There you go. Rob, I suppose yours is horticulture in particular. It's a sector that's been decimated really by market forces.
Yeah, I think I was looking up there earlier on, and we've lost 85% of horticultural growers in the last generation, which is just incredible. And I mean, it's a big topic. There's no easy answers, but I mean, maybe more generally, like we've been 2-3 days into this now, a deep dive into, and I haven't heard a lot around education.
No.
And it's not just horticulture, but I think even more generally, like what's the difference between a tomato grown in Ballinspittle that's 5-10 kilometers to Kinsale versus one grown in the south of Spain, and there's a massive difference actually. And you're right, like the reason, one of the main reasons, there's many, but one of the main reasons I think like we're seeing that drop is just like the power of the supermarkets, people's concept of food, and all that needs to change. And that's an educational piece.
I've been saying it for a long time now. I think like food, nature, our relationship with each other should be like core to school, like core to it. There was one thing I was going to say now about the food price, but it's gone completely out of my head. That's super. I wish we had more time to chat. Best of luck in your farming endeavours. I just love when people like yourselves come down here and chat to us. I think there's so much to be learned on both sides. It was a big theme at the conference the other day that the two groups are, farmers and environmentalists are talking over each other's heads. Like the peatland thing that came up during the week. Michael Healy says, we should consider planting peat. A barrage of environmental criticism, a barrage of and then to be fair, Philip Boucher Hayes did a piece in the radio where he took very measured people, ecological experts and whatever, and all of them actually agreed. There's nuance here, and there's a middle ground, and there's actually a conversation to be had. But that conversation is rarely had through the megaphone. So
actually, one thing I should add, the milk processors especially are becoming more and more aware of the sustainability and really trying to push that with their farmers, with the farmers that are providing their milk, and so they're they're teaming up with the likes of UCC and doing these Sustainability Academy courses.
Yeah.
And so each year there's more and more farmers that are taking part in these courses. I just finished one last year. And, you know, it's fantastic. It's a fantastic community to have. So I do think at least the industry is itself is trying to push in the right
I
direction.
don't know what you're like. I have a good mate from Cork, Donald Sheehan. Again, productive farmer, farming for nature. You know, and he is a bit more critical of the processes. They're offering maybe 0.5% on a litre of milk if you're signed up with this
That's right,
sustainable. He's like, it needs to be 5 cents or 6 cents. Like
true.
0.5% isn't going to move the needle.
Yeah.
But if people see, Jesus, there's, you know, a tenth of the milk price is for sustainability initiatives, they'll really engage and embrace more. So yeah, that'd be great to see. Anyway, a bowl of us for a great panel. Thank you.